Hello and welcome. Welcome to this session of Tomorrow's Leaders, Effective Communication, Navigating the New Normal. My name is Susan Hollister, and I have been affiliated with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation as a board member in the Northeastern New York chapter for 25 years. I've also had the enriching experience of being able to attend the National Volunteer Leaders Conference and connect with like-minded individuals from across the country and hear all about the medical progress in CF care and research, which was one of the most encouraging and energizing experiences of my life. My personal connection to CF is that my niece was born into a large family that had very little familiarity with CF. She was born with CF, and through our interest, care, and support for her and her parents, we have come to learn through the CF Foundation so much about how the foundation can make a meaningful difference in the lives of those with CF. I'm happy to say that she is absolutely thriving. Thanks to cutting-edge research and medical therapies available and made possible through the CF Foundation, she is a very proud mother of a beautiful daughter and expecting her second child. So for that, I am personally grateful to the CF Foundation. And all of you that are with us today as part of tomorrow's Leaders Program are leading the way to the future of not only the CF Foundation, but our nation and quite frankly, the world. So you are our future. For myself, I am a human resources professional. I am the Chief Human Resources Officer at Pioneer, a financial institution in upstate New York. And I've been in the field for a little over 30 years. And through that time, I have personally experienced the importance of communication in the workplace. And quite frankly, I believe it's probably the single most critical factor in success and in job fulfillment. In my role as a Chief Human Resources Officer, it's important that I demonstrate each and every day my commitment to the promotion of diversity, inclusion, and very importantly, the advancement of young professionals. This is an area of tremendous focus in my organization. We've created programs and structures that have built a foundation for internships, job shadowing, career development, and opportunities for success among our emerging leaders inside our company and outside of our company and our community. And personally, I leverage my role and my leadership responsibilities to enhance my commitment to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And this is really where you come in and where you will follow in my stead and have the opportunity to make a difference improving the lives of those with CF by educating our community on CF. And ultimately, what we're all hoping for and working towards is ultimately curing cystic fibrosis. Well, I'm very excited to introduce our speakers and start our program, but first, a couple of housekeeping items. Our speakers are going to come on and share their knowledge and experience, and throughout the session, we will have chances for all of you tuning in to participate in our discussions through the chat. So take a look at your screen right now, find the chat box. If you have a question, feel free to put that in now. If you'd like to just say hi to everybody and identify who you are and where in the country you're located, that would be great as well. Also, feel free to put a question in the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Also, during the session, feel free to chat with members across the country. And make sure you select everyone when you're sending a message. Let's start right now with a poll. So maybe you can go into the chat box and put your answer in. Let us know what industry you're in. It just popped up on your screen. And let us know overall how you feel about communication in the new hybrid workforce. Great, thank you for participating. We'll look at the results later in our session. Now I'd like to welcome our speakers. I am joined by three very dynamic individuals. They are your peers. They will share their experiences and their points of view on how communication has been challenging and rewarding at the same time. Our workplace has never seen the kind of change as it has since we heard the word COVID. And today, our speakers are going to provide their insight on the evolution that has brought us to where we are today, and also give you a preview as to what they believe lies ahead. So please join me in welcoming RJ Thompson, Robin Rechtenwald, and Sophia Gordon. Let's start with RJ. RJ Thompson, MFA, is an award-winning marketing and graphic design professional. Currently, RJ is the Director of Digital Marketing at Joseph M. Katz Graduate School of Business and College of Business Administration at the University of Pittsburgh. RJ is also the co-principal and creative strategist for Plus Public at Pennsylvania-based social enterprise, which is a Pennsylvania-based social enterprise that focuses on cultivating community and economic development impact through the creation of branded communication platforms, creative placemaking, and storytelling initiatives for communities in revival. RJ teaches marketing and design at the University of Pittsburgh and Point Park University. RJ, in addition to the fact that you told us a funny story earlier when we were planning about the PTA at your child's school, what else would you like to share about yourself in your introduction?
I am a CF patient. Yeah, so I was born obviously with CF, and fortunately I've been pretty healthy throughout my entire life, but I'm on Trikafta like many folks are, and it's been an absolutely transformative experience. And I can't remember the last time I coughed out any mucus, right? So it's absolutely a miracle. But yeah, I'd say that's probably the most important thing about me that I haven't shared before. So thank you for asking.
RJ, and we'll be back at you with some questions. I'd like to introduce Sophia. Sophia Gordon is a trusted business partner with subject matter expertise in human resources management. With over a decade of progressive project management experience, Sophia has produced impactful results in training, development, performance management, policy development, and enforcement throughout the tech and financial service industries. On a personal note, Sophia is passionate about local sustainability. She supports the mission to inspire choices that lead to a healthy, equitable, and vibrant community for generations to come. Sounds wonderful, Sophia. Anything you'd like to share?
Well, thank you, Susan, for the introduction. I want to share how grateful I am to participate in today's talk. I am here in support of some wonderful friends of mine who work to further Cystic Fibrosis Foundation's mission on a daily basis here in Charlotte, North Carolina. So again, I'm happy to be here and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sophia. And again, we will be back to you with some questions shortly. Robin Rechtenwald is a dynamic marketing communications professional with more than a decade of experience working with B2B, B2C, and nonprofit organizations. Combining her love for networking, storytelling, and problem solving, Robin has developed and implemented strategic communication plans, crisis communication plans, and media trainings for a variety of clients, including NYU, Kennywood, YMCA of Greater Pittsburgh, Caliente Pizza and Draft House, the Ryan Shazer Fund for Spinal Rehabilitation, Visit Pittsburgh, and Media Express. Robin earned her master's degree in integrated marketing communications from West Virginia University and a bachelor's degree in communication and Spanish from Duquesne University. She's also an adjunct professor at Duquesne University. Robin, very accomplished. What else would you like to share with the group?
Oh, thank you, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. So I've known RJ, first of all, for over a decade before I even graduated from my undergrad. So it's really nice to be on this call with him. But I am also a family member of a CF patient. So my cousin, who celebrated her 40th birthday last year when I was fundraising money for CF. Yes, we're BFFs for Jay. She is a CF patient. My uncle is a world-renowned CF researcher. He's written books and goes all over the world talking about CF patients and the research that he's doing. His name is Jeff Wine. If anybody's ever heard from him, he's out of Stanford. Yes. So that is my uncle on my mom's side. So I've been tied to the CF mission almost my entire life, and then meeting RJ over a decade ago and now being involved with the Western Pennsylvania chapter. I'm excited to bring those two worlds together, my communications world and my CF world. So nice to meet everyone.
Thank you so much. And thank you also for your family's commitment to cystic fibrosis, Robin. That's impressive. And thank you for sharing that. We will move on to our planned discussion in a moment, but first let's see those results of our poll. What industry and field are our individuals in? Do we have the results? Here we go. Oops, had them and lost them. There we go. So it looks like we're most heavily, well, in other 50%, 25% in healthcare, tech, education, sales. Excellent. And our next question was regarding the hybrid workplace. We have the answer to the next question. Looking for that. Okay, we can come back to that. No problem. Let's jump right into our panel. So let's start with Sophia. Sophia, question for you. And then, of course, any of our other panel members, Robin, RJ, feel free to jump in. But let's start with Sophia. Sophia, what recommendations do you have for all of us on how we can improve communication in the workplace?
What recommendation I have to improve communications in the workplace? I would say simply communicate. If you have a question, ask it. We hear all the time, the only stupid question is the one that wasn't asked. And we have to use our voices, especially after a pandemic. No one can truly guess what is on someone else's mind. So if you have a need, speak up and use your voice. And as long as you're doing it respectfully, I believe it's typically well received.
Excellent. Thank you, Sophia. And you know, now that we have so many people working remote where, you know, pre-COVID, more people were interacting in the office. So I'll look to RJ and Robin. How are you navigating the fact that when you have that question, like Sophia said, to ask, or that message you want to share, that the person might not be sitting down the hall from you anymore?
So one thing that I've been experiencing is like a absolutely gigantic wave of using Microsoft Teams and Slack and communication tools like that, where people aren't necessarily communicating like we are now via Zoom or even a Teams call or even a phone call. It's all text-based communication. In my world, that makes for a lot of efficiencies. And, you know, I supervise a staff and it allows them to ask questions without, you know, any kind of anxieties or fear over looking unprepared or stupid or whatever, you know, conditions come with that. So the problem with that is that there's a lot that can be confused with just text-based communication. And, you know, in higher ed right now, we're feeling a real pinch on enrollment. So we're going through something called a demographic shift or a demographic cliff, where there are less people enrolling in college. And that's damaging, you know, all types of different things, supports, resources, funding. And when you apply the pressure and you're communicating through text only, it leaves a lot of opportunity for confusion or misinterpretation and misunderstanding tone. And especially throughout the pandemic, I've seen a lot of just straight up miscommunication because people don't want to either talk on the phone or via Zoom or on a Teams call and just rely on text, and people are getting mixed messages. And I would say that does not provide a lot of clarity or even respect to the conversations that need to be had in the most proper way.
Vice RJ. Robin, question for you. One of the things we learned in your bio is your expertise in the area of storytelling. So now, as we're facing the interview process with individuals at a company, and we're looking at what is the best way to communicate our story with a potential employer, versus the most traditional role of physically going in for an interview and sitting across the table from the person interviewing you. What kind of recommendations do you have for us, Robin, and how we can best tell our personal story to a potential employer? And then maybe we can get into, with the full panel, the more technical way we do it. Is it through email? Is it the phone? Is it on a Zoom call? Is it in person? But Robin, talk to us a little bit about how to convey, our story of who we are to a potential employer.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if every industry is seeing this, but at least in the PR, marketing, communications industry, and I specifically work for an agency, the first place that I'm seeing recruiters and HR people go is LinkedIn. So, there's recruiters who've reached out to me personally on LinkedIn asking if I'm interested in a job, even though there's no indication on my LinkedIn or social media that I'm interested. So I'd say for most industries, the first place to share your story and share your talents and your expertise is not only just having your LinkedIn updated, but using the articles that are on there and posting more, even if it's not your own written articles, but just sharing other articles that you're seeing, industry articles. I do think that LinkedIn is a very powerful tool right now in the recruiting field. The other thing I'd say is video interviews are tough. When we're not having these in-person interviews, you're trying to be polite and let other people speak, and sometimes it could be awkward. So, this is where you'd mentioned storytelling, being prepared for those interviews, having concrete examples of your work ready and available. That's going to be helpful. And also just being ready to share that elevator pitch. I've once sat on an interview that was 15 minutes long, and we only got through the first question, which was, tell me a little bit about yourself. And they spent 15 minutes telling me about themselves, and we didn't have any more time to go through more questions. So I'd also say brevity is very important as well, which Excellent. Hopefully that answer was brief enough.
That was an excellent answer, Robin. And I think it kind of ties right into a question I have for Sophia, twofold, because Sophia works in the HR field, but also has a strong commitment to sustainable aspects of our environment. And corporate social responsibility is such an important area we find to emerging young professionals. And so, Sophia, question for you in terms of communication. What's the best way for an individual to communicate their interests, their passion in the area of sustainability or other areas of corporate social responsibility in the workplace with their supervisors and leaders and people that can really make a difference and enable that employee to become more involved in those areas?
Sure. I think a great place to start is those conversations we have on a Monday morning about, hey, how was your weekend? And my weekends are always eventful. I have two children, a 13-year-old as well as a 4-year-old. So where my husband and I are entertaining two very different little humans, and talking about our weekends would incorporate for me that we went on a walk with the organization Sustain Charlotte here, which talks about making Charlotte into a more walkable city. Because right now, if you don't have a car in Charlotte, then the possibilities of getting around is very is slim to none. and talking about, oh, we worked on our garden, or with the fall season with Halloween around the corner, we went pumpkin picking because it's about time for us to carve the pumpkin that we picked 2 weeks ago, and we still haven't done that. So just bringing in some of those personal aspects around sustainability that we tend to overlook as, oh, it wasn't a big deal. It was okay. It was a great weekend, and then moving on. The other piece is asking others about their take on sustainability, and asking managers or the sustainability partners within an organization beyond what's written on the organization's webpage, but asking what are the organizations that they are supporting, or what does success look like in the future in terms of sustainability within an organization.
Excellent. And thank you, Sophia. And I think combining some of that information with Robin's advice about kind of that elevator speech, but having those little elevator speeches be about topics that you're passionate about, and how to convey that to your employer and your coworkers. Excellent. So we've talked about the fact that pre-COVID, although some people were working hybrid and remote, it certainly wasn't on the scale that it is now. I'm going to ask the panel, and I think I'll pass this one over to Robin. Robin, are you seeing any generational differences with the concept of remote work?
So I might be wrong, but this is just from my own perspective, what I'm seeing and hearing, and I'd love to hear from everybody on the call how you're feeling. So teaching students, these students, the future workforce that are about to graduate, they've been stuck really for the past 2 years in a virtual world. I know a lot of them were excited, at least my class was excited to come back to in-person. I asked them, how do we feel about in-person classes? Do we want to have them? Would you rather be virtual? And almost everybody in the classroom said they wanted an in-person experience because they were sick of sitting behind a computer. So I found that very interesting with future people coming into our workplaces. How can we get them to have those experiences in the office? I'm also noticing, though, that once we are in these full-time jobs, that it is easier to work from home. We can start earlier, work later without having to commute, or without having to miss dinner, or without having to miss our kids' activities. And so I am sort of seeing that middle management, that middle group of people, maybe people in their 20s or 30s, maybe even their 40s, that do like that flexibility of working from home. But then what I'm hearing from research is that a lot of CEOs or a lot of senior leaders want people back in the office. They're afraid that productivity isn't there. They think that culture is missing, which I think is definitely something that we're seeing with hybrid work. And so what I'm hearing from a lot of senior leaders and CEOs that I'm speaking to that I work with is they want people back in the office. So you kind of have all over the map, the younger generation that's eager to be in the office, but then, more of a middle generation that likes that flexibility and might not be as willing to come in. And then the senior generation that's what they're used to and they want people in the office. So it's very general, and it's don't take me as the scientific data here.
Well, Robin, that's an excellent point, because you have your perceptions, and I think we all do from our personal experiences and what we're seeing around us or we're hearing from family or friends. But it's so important that leaders in the workplace know what the preferences of their employees are, know what their needs are, and how can they be most effective outside of work and in work. So I'm going to pass this to RJ with a question. Since COVID, a lot of companies have struggled with flexible schedules and some of the remote work options. How do you recommend, RJ, an individual communicate those working preferences to their boss, their manager, their leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, Robin, you're definitely hitting it, by the way, on the perception of remote work. Everything you just said resonated with me. In I guess to answer that question, Susan, I'll offer a little bit of a preamble or some context. So in higher ed, COVID just took everything and moved it upside down. And one of the things that a lot of universities realized is that when they had employees that were working from home and not having to make a daily commute, that those employees felt more empowered. They were doing better work. They were more efficient. They were able to keep more of the money that they were making and not having to spend it on parking and gas and things like that. So it offered a lot of great benefits for those that were having to make the commute. But as a consequence of that, they felt the culture suffered, that there was a lack of community. And insofar as higher ed is concerned, like, we never lost that sense of community. It's always been there in whatever format. But and I'm speaking generally, but we've all across the industry have started to come back, and 2 days on, 3 days at home, and it varies in different combinations, but that's been effective for us. And when it comes to requesting that time off, or that time to work remotely, I found that higher ed has been more than understanding and accommodating. We don't necessarily look at this from the president of the university makes a decree and then we all have to follow it. Generally, what's happening is folks are responding to their immediate supervisor to figure out what the preferences are. So there's a ton of flexibility. And one of the reasons that flexibility exists, because there is such massive brain drain happening in higher ed. People are leaving higher ed for better jobs, better paying jobs, totally remote jobs. So this is actually a retention tactic that they're using. And I say, great, it's about time. But insofar as like approaching your individual, your supervisor on that one-by-one basis, I mean, you can make an argument for your productivity, your efficiency, but in some cases, especially mine, it could be as simple as, I'm sick, I'm staying home, period. I as a immunocompromised CF patient, I'm not going to go to campus when I know there's a COVID outbreak. Right. So a lot of it's coming down to common sense. And a part of that is going to be the trust you have between you and your supervisor. And if you say that you're going to complete X amount of things during your remote working days, there will be an expectation that those things will be completed. And in some cases, if that doesn't happen, at least, if there's a goodwill, faith, doing it in earnest there, then that's fine. Also, the last part to that is most of the supervisors you have, they don't want to be there either. So they can probably relate. And it's just about having an open conversation about how that works between you and your supervisor and the rest of the team. And, the pandemic has forced us all to work efficiently remotely. And I think we're getting past that. Now it's a part of, at least in my industry, it's baked into the cake.
Excellent, RJ, and so many important themes in your answer. Clearly the importance of communication, but it's retention, it's job satisfaction, it's how you feel about your employer. And it's also, quite frankly, valuing diversity, because there are a number of reasons, more than we could ever list in this call today, why it might be beneficial for someone to work remote. But it can also be a win for the organization. So excellent answer. And kind of staying with that theme, it seems as though since COVID, we have had more meetings than we ever have before. Virtual meetings, in-person meetings, meetings about how to have the best meeting. So we're spending a lot of time meeting, and I'm going to pass this over to Robin. So question for you, Robin, what advice can you give us on the creating the most effective communication through meetings? What can be done before, during, after, what types of meetings, just whatever advice you might have for us in that regard.
Yeah, so I'm smiling because I'm struggling with this right now personally, working for an agency on like 5 or 6 accounts. I'm in meetings all day. I'm in client meeting. I was late to this meeting because I had another meeting that ran over, and I'm sure it was making everybody very nervous. But at least what I'm doing with my teams and with my clients is, yes, there are a lot of meetings, which is a good thing and a bad thing with hybrid work. The good thing is it's really important to be touching base, even if it's just, a one-on-one meeting with your boss every week. I know that adds another meeting for that week, but it's a good way to connect with that person on a personal level, to kind of brag a little bit, to talk about your challenges so that you're not getting too far away from having those conversations. But I always have an agenda. For whatever meeting I'm going into, I always have an agenda and I have an objective. What is the point of this meeting? If you share that agenda and that objective with everyone in advance of the meeting, that puts everybody on the same page. Maybe there are things that people can review in advance. I know it's hard to get people to review things in advance before a meeting, but at least it's out there and it can help the conversation. And then I always send recaps after meetings, recaps of action items, holding people accountable, setting due dates, things like that. Now, we do a lot of this with client meetings, but I think it's important to do it on internal meetings too. And I'd say the other thing is, the other trick that I use is, if it's a half an hour, if it's a meeting that you think it really is only going to take 10 or 15 minutes, schedule it for 10 or 15 minutes. If you think it's a meeting that really is only going to take 45 minutes, schedule it for 45 minutes versus an hour. I think that in our culture, we're so used to scheduling half an hour or an hour meetings, and we don't have to. Like, we can schedule 15-minute meetings with people if it's just a quick question, or we can schedule 45-minute meetings with people. That was a trick that was taught to me a while back, and I really like that trick.
Thank you, Robin. And I learned a lot in your response. And I would never have thought to schedule something for 10 minutes, but I think we would be less likely also to push meetings off, because sometimes, we look at our calendars and I say, I don't think I can do an hour there. Let's move that to another day. But maybe if it really is only going to take 20 minutes, go for 20 minutes. That's some excellent advice. Now, Sophie, I'm going to pass this to you. Robin gave us a lot of really great information on how to create the most effective environment for success in meetings, virtual and in person. Let's say that in our workplace, it's not working for us. So the cadence of meetings, or the way in which they're structured or they're running, is not working well. Maybe we're getting meeting fatigue, or some other manner in which it's ineffective. How do you recommend we communicate that back to the people we work with?
Sure. And I'll answer your question, and then I'll give some background on where I am at this point in time in my career. It goes back to asking the question. If I receive a meeting invitation for an hour, I am reaching out via instant messenger or a quick email or even a quick phone call. Hey, do you really need me for an hour? I have some other priorities that I need to juggle. And if you require my attention, I can give you 15 minutes and we can always reschedule at a later time. And the other piece that I wanted to add is backing up to what RJ stated and what Robin supported around working remotely and being able to share our time beyond 9 to 5 with our respective employers. I have been in a remote role since 2018, January of 2018 specifically. And I say to myself often, had I known a pandemic was around the corner just a year later, would I have accepted a remote role? And since then, I've gone on to another organization that is also 100% remote. And the difference between those two organizations for me is that one was in banking, and we would have, let's say, quarterly meetings in person, which was fun to wake up, dress up, and show up. And now my new organization, we don't have any local offices. We have warehouses in the Charlotte area. And I still have not been to a warehouse in over a year and a half. But that said, I get to focus most of my time on my role as an HR professional. I work with associates who are throughout the United States of America as well as Canada, and that's not a 9 to 5. I think if I still had a need to travel to an office, and show up at 9 a.m. and end my day by 5 p.m. to pick up, drop off, support at sports events, attend school functions, PTA meetings, I don't think my employer would be as pleased as they are with me now, because there are boundaries, clear timelines that communicate, hey, if we don't get in the car by 5 o'clock, we'll be stuck in traffic until 6. So those are the things that we need to think about as we are performing day to day. And as we are having conversations with our employers and with our colleagues around the need for our time. Can I talk to you in the car? Although that is against policy. So I don't recommend that one. But can we schedule this meeting, let's say 7 p.m. my time, because I'm flexible and I'm willing to meet with you after dinner for me, but it may be in the middle of your workday. So again, having those conversations, asking those questions, and not being afraid to share some personal details about yourself to let everyone know that yes, you're human. And although we need to work, but we also need to live.
Excellent. And that will be a takeaway for me, Sophia. We need to work, but we need to live. That's a great quote. And what an outstanding panel. We were scheduled to have this portion of the session end at 2:40, and it is 2:40 on the nose. So thank you, panel. We're going to continue now with questions from our attendees. So take a look at the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen if you'd like to submit a question. In the meantime, we have a couple of questions that were pre-submitted, and I'll jump into those, and then I'm going to look to my panel to jump right in on these. So the first one that I have is, what tools will help me work remotely effectively? Who'd like to take that one?
I could start. So I would recommend using some project management tools like Asana, Slack, Trello. While Slack is primarily a communications tool, it does have plugins that you can add into it that can do project management and scheduling. There are also other tools like Monday.com, right? Depending on your budget or the budget of your employer. Trello, I like to start there, especially if you're new to project management software, because it's free to use, it's simple, it's drag and drop, and it integrates with other tools pretty easily, and that may be all you need. But otherwise, that's where I would start.
Excellent. Go ahead.
I like to say I don't mind starting with just the basic calendar. If I'm able to put everything on the calendar, then I have a snapshot of where I have scheduling conflicts, or I'll also bake it when I actually need to leave to drive somewhere and how long that drive is going to take. Because if I dare say, we're not Genie from I Dream of Genie, we cannot, and get there. I don't know if anybody knows that reference, but we have to bake in travel time. So everything goes on the calendar for me.
Excellent. Robin, I'm going to pass.
Calendar.
Oh, go ahead, Robin.
Go ahead, Susan.
No, I would want your suggestions. Go right ahead. What tools?
I love the calendar trick. I've started that too. I block out time. I think somebody else mentioned like blocking out time on your calendar so that people can't schedule your meetings on top of that. I also use Excel. I don't know if anybody's an Excel geek like me, but I have my Excel of my projects, the status of them, the due date, and I normally share those with teams too. So if those project management tools aren't affordable or you just aren't enjoying them, Excel is a great tool as well.
So we've probably all heard the term or read a little bit about something called quiet quitting. And one of our attendees submitted a question. How do you feel about quiet quitting? So I'm going to ask my panelists, do you think you have seen any of this in your workplace? Or you're aware of it? And what are your thoughts?
I'm aware of quiet quitting, and in these scenarios in which it has been brought to my attention, I should say, I ask what tools and resources are available to the person or to the organization, because I find that in this great technology age, there are so many resources that can help us be effective and efficient. And if you are somewhere that does not have the right tools, that may not be the organization for you.
And I'm going to stay right with that theme, Sophia. Great answer. So the right organization for you. One of our attendees asked, what tips could you provide in finding the right fit for a job moving forward? So I would say, considering, an organization you can communicate well with and is the right fit for you. RJ, what do you recommend our attendee think about when they're looking for the right fit in a new position?
Well, I am someone that has been looking at different types of jobs over the past 2 years. And I think for me, and maybe perhaps some of you as well, the pandemic, for all that it took away on the professional front, it certainly provided a lot of opportunities for professional development and skill development. And some people build up a lot of new skills throughout the past 2 years, and they don't necessarily have an opportunity to use them in their present job. And that can feel really limiting and, certainly kind of nudge you towards quiet quitting, right? Where you're doing the minimum because your employers basically said you can go far above and beyond, but we still don't need those tools. But the better way to look at that is we don't understand how to use your new talents. So when you're looking for a new position, you want to be looking for the conditions of the position or positions that use those new skills you developed or put you on a path to the place where you want to go, not necessarily tomorrow, but next year, because we've all had a lot of time to think about our careers as well. And like I said, in higher ed, where we're experiencing this mass exodus of people, how do you retain all of that talent? And the thing is, like, higher ed necessarily can't. So all of those folks that are finding jobs outside of higher ed, they are getting jobs based on the skills that they developed during this low period of time. And that would be my approach to it. So I'm looking for positions where I can use more of my skills, have more of a voice, more of an impact, versus like just trying to chase a higher salary. So I think there are a lot of people that are just trying to find a new home where they can put all of that specific type of effort into their work and be appreciated and respected for it and contribute to innovation versus just chasing a higher salary.
RJ,
Okay.
I think you touched on so many important aspects of the employment proposition. And I think from a communications perspective, it's important that we're able to articulate what we're looking for, just as you did. And it's important for us to be introspective and think about that. So you really nailed a lot of important areas.
I have an additional thought on that. I'm sorry. I would only chase positions that I were interested in, provided that they shared the salary requirements. If they were public about the salary, then that is a position that I would follow, because that company is basically saying within their employer branding perspective, we want people who value their own time. We don't want to mislead or pander to folks by obscuring that. And I think from a values point of view, that resonates a lot with me, and that's a huge movement right now.
Excellent. Oh, you're right, RJ. Go ahead, Sophia.
Now I'm just saying, well said. And I want to add that it's like dating. You have your non-negotiables. You know what you're interested in. Don't negotiate that.
Excellent. No, that's great life advice, Sophia. That's excellent. Thank you. And I'm going to stay with you for a moment, Sophia. So I understand that you were working remote prior to COVID. So one of the questions that we have is now that so many people are working remote, what do you see that's changed? What's different from when you were doing it pre-COVID, or is it the same?
It's definitely changed. I think it has caused some organizations, and not the broader organization, but perhaps smaller departments within, to recognize that we still need to connect as a team so we can work together towards the bottom line and just be successful, or just like each other, since we have to communicate throughout the day. And there are opportunities to, I've heard of teams doing happy hours, not that they are drinking alcoholic beverages, but they're still calling it a happy hour because it's not necessarily focused on the deliverables, but it's focused on how are you? What are your interests? Let's dress up today and see how creative we can be with a specific team. My team specifically, we even tried a karaoke one day, but too bad too many people ended up with COVID and they were recovering from COVID. So no one had a voice to actually participate. But we've done things around breast cancer awareness. We've done things around Cinco de Mayo, Valentine's Day, you name it. Every month has a theme which can bring us together to be creative, to be social, although we are remote, and to just learn about each other.
Excellent. I'm going to go over to you, Robin, with another question. We promised at the beginning of this session that we would talk about communication today and where things have evolved through the pandemic and found us where we are today. Give us your thoughts on how you see the hybrid model evolving in the future. And also, I'd also be interested, Robin, in anything you might want to share about the future of communication in the workplace.
Oh man, this is the big one. So communication, I'm sorry, can you just repeat that? I know the second part was the future of communication. What was the first part?
So it's get your crystal balls out, panel, and tell us about the future of both communication in the workplace and the remote working.
In remote work, yeah. So my thoughts, I'm not an expert, but I do work with a company that works a lot with, they do IT for all these companies. So I'm monitoring a lot during the day. I work with a lot of HR, CHROs as well. So I'm constantly monitoring stories about hybrid work, remote work, and also the metaverse. So I'm going to start there. I know that a lot of companies are starting to dabble into the metaverse, starting to purchase the headsets or some sort of VR and AI technology. I mean, that's everything that communication is about right now, or is VR and AI is the future of communications. We've been talking about that probably for a decade at this point. So I have seen some companies starting to invest in having meetings in the metaverse or having meetings in some of these virtual places. Those are probably the bigger companies like the Apples, the Microsofts, like those companies that we're seeing. But honestly, for right now, maybe like in the next 2 years, we're going to see some companies go fully remote and never turn back. We're going to see some companies stay on this hybrid, and they're going to have to decide what the policies are. Is it 1 day? Is it 2 days? Is it 3 days? Is it once a month we bring people in? Those are going to be up to the companies and the leaders and what they want to do there. And hopefully they're getting that input from their employees. And then we're going to see the companies that are just going to demand that employees are there 4 or 5 days a week. And this is where I think we're going to see a lot of shifting, where we are going to, as employees, looking for jobs, we're going to have to be upfront about what we want, what we can do. If we really can't do 4 days in the office, we need to communicate that during the hiring process and not after you're hired. So I think that's what we're going to see right now is a mix of these companies, and you kind of have to figure out what's the best fit for you and decide that's where you're going to be working.
Excellent. And Robin, we had another question from an attendee, and I think you kind of just answered it. The question was, why do you think now more than ever leaders have to lead with transparent communication? And you really nailed that on both sides, we need to be transparent and know not only what the expectations are, but where we stand with regard to those expectations. So I'm going to look to RJ and Sophia. Anything you'd like to add in addition to the question about why it's so important that leaders lead with transparent communication today?
I can definitely add to that, because the challenge now is that we've proven that the work will get done. And the follow-up question is, why would an organization go against that? And I understand leaders will have to communicate down to their direct reports what the overarching position is on returning to an office. But if you're not transparent, then your team will look to you to say, well, what's next for you, leader? And sometimes we see leaders leave because they prefer the flexibility or the remote opportunity. And now the question goes back to the organization around, are you willing to lose me? And yes, we as associates are replaceable, but it seems in RJ's industry specifically, if there is a cliff, how many are going to leave an organization before the organization recognizes transparency is key and we can all perform and I'm willing to show up, but you actually want me in person rather than showing up? And there's a difference.
Absolutely.
You know,
Excellent.
I'd like to add to this. I would add that everyone is experiencing a growing higher standard. We want more from our leaders on all levels. And transparency is absolutely one of those key factors, but so is accountability, just straight up accountability, and transparency has everything to do with that. The more that the truth is obscured from us or not fully communicated, the harder it makes our lives, the harder it makes our job. It damages our work product, it damages our reputation. No one has the patience or interest in dealing with any of that, and that's why we're demanding that from our leaders, be they elected or otherwise, right? But I found that when you challenge your leaders to be more transparent, they ideally embrace that. It actually makes their lives easier. They don't have to craft a PR message around it. You know, they can just state what the issue is, and then when you come out with your truth like that so clearly, it's authentic. And authenticity is the last part to that we also want from our leaders and in their communication with us.
Do you have to just caveat that RJ used PR in the negative sense, that even though it might be a PR message, we're still coming out with authentic. We have this battle between advertising and PR.
That's called the alley-oop. I lift you up and, you know, I set you up there. Yep.
That's great. Keeping each other
or
in check.
fake or bad. I just want to put that out there.
That's great. Thank you, Robin. And thank you, RJ and Sophia. All three of you phenomenal panelists. And we had great questions from the group. So thank you so much for sharing your insight on communication in the workplace and beyond. And special thanks to all of our attendees for interacting and joining us today.